Now, GB News presenter Nigel Farage is in Washington, D.C. at a conference called the Conservative Political Action Conference. It's known as CPAC, and he's due to give a speech there later today. It's almost the equivalent of the annual conference for the Republicans.
Yes, it's a big deal. Meanwhile, Nigel has also been offered to work alongside a Labour government as Britain's ambassador to the US to help strengthen a potential relationship between Donald Trump and Keir Starmer, should both men win power later this year, describing himself as the ideal man for the job. Should we get all the gossip then?
Well, he told us that earlier this week, but we're joined now by Nigel. And Nigel, are you still serious about this offer to Sir Keir Starmer? Is this bridge between the Donald and Sir Keir?
Well, here's the point. I mean, Labour are 25 points ahead in the opinion polls, looking like becoming the next government. Trump is ahead quite strongly in the key swing states in this country. So we may finish up in a few months' time with a Labour government and a new Trump presidency. At the moment, there is no relationship between Keir Starmer's Labour Party and Team Trump. In fact, David Lammy and others have said very disobliging things about him. Forget the personalities. What matters here is our relationship with the United States of America, the future of NATO. These things are absolutely vital. And the argument I'm making is if you put in a classic Foreign Office type as the ambassador to Washington, they won't even get through the front door of the Oval Office. You need somebody who knows Trump, who believes in defending not just our national interest, but actually the safety of the West. I think that defence and security are going to become, over the course of the next 5 years, one of the most important global issues, if they're not already. So look, all I'm saying is, I would be more than happy to try and help in the national interest. If not me, then please pick somebody who's not your usual Oxbridge Foreign Office type.
Well, very interesting indeed. But Nigel, on the issue of security of Europe and the West, are you not concerned that perhaps Donald Trump may pull the plug on funding Ukraine, stop backing Ukraine, and that could leave us all in far more peril than we would be otherwise?
Well, first things first, NATO. That's been the big debate over the course of the last couple of weeks. There is no way that a Donald Trump administration, no way that they would, just abandon their allies like the United Kingdom. What he wants is NATO to pay its fair share. On Ukraine, this is much, much more difficult. There is a strong feeling amongst American taxpayers that they're shoveling tens of billions into a country that is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. They've no idea whether the money is getting to the right place. The future funding of Ukraine is going to be a very major problem. And I think what Trump wants is peace talks. But I have to say, after the murder of Navalny, that becomes very much more difficult.
Yeah, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has offered the hand to Donald Trump to come to visit him in Ukraine. Do you think that he might be wanting to accept that offer, perhaps do a walkabout, as Boris Johnson once did?
Well, have a think about Trump as president. They all said this insular American president who'll withdraw America from the world. Well, in one sense, it's true. He's the first president in years not to launch a new war. But actually, he went all over the world trying to be a peace broker. He crossed the line and went into North Korea at a time when there were great fears as to what their next actions might be. He helped to broker the most incredible series of peace agreements in the Middle East, called the Abraham Accords. Something I think that really prompted the Hamas attack was a fear that Trump might get back in again later this year. So he has shown himself as a peace broker, and yes, I think he would go to Ukraine. I've no doubt about it.
And Nigel, have you got your notes ready for your speech this evening? What are you going to say? You probably don't need notes, actually. Silly me.
I've never used notes. No, I've always spoken from here and said what I think. And what I'm going to say is this, that when I first came here over a decade ago, I was the only foreign speaker. Now we have former British prime ministers, we have the newly elected president of Argentina, over 20 countries represented, and CPAC has become a genuinely international global phenomenon. And what I'll say is it's good news that we're seeing conservative-style parties right across Europe, resurgent, in America, doing very, very well. Our country, perhaps the exception, just at this moment in time. But that time is short, and that unless we're prepared to stand up and defend everything Western civilization was based on, and by that I mean family, nation and Judeo-Christian identity, which underpins everything we've been building for 1,000 years and more. Unless we have the moral courage to stand up to it, we'll finish up with scenes such as those we've seen in Westminster this week, where fear stalks the corridors.
Absolutely fascinating, Nigel, that Javier Milei, the new president of Argentina, is there with you too. I mean, he's someone who's cut the number of government departments in half. He's taken a chainsaw to the government. He wants to abolish the central bank. He's doing some really rather radical things in a way that perhaps most conservative leaders have been fairly timid to do. Do you think there are lessons that could be learnt? Because one of the big criticisms of Donald Trump as president when he was for his 4-year term was that the debt grew, was that spending grew. Could he learn something from Javier Milei, perhaps?
Well, I think that Milei has been incredibly brave. I mean, Argentina, once a great country, was literally going down the drain. He's come in, he's done some very radical things. Interestingly, in the last 48 hours, the markets have turned. The markets are now saying, do you know what? Maybe Milei's economics is going to work. Maybe it is going to save Argentina from literally going down the economic drain. So, actually, do you know what? Ask me that question in a year's time, Tom, but I wonder whether we might all learn something from what he's doing.
It's absolutely fascinating because people describe the Liz Truss era in the United Kingdom as if, oh, this is market economics, this libertarian experiment that has failed. When she increased spending, she tried to fix the price of energy, she did all of this sort of big state stuff that perhaps was more negative to global markets. You look at someone who's actually cutting the size of government, and it seems that the only Conservative leader anywhere in the world that's doing that actually is Javier Milei, and the markets respond positively to that.
Yeah. I mean, Argentinian bonds are at a 4-year high. Projections for the fall of the currency have significantly declined in the futures markets. No. International investors are beginning to say, you know what, this guy might just be getting it right. And I hope, for the sake of Argentina, that he does.
Well, thank you very much indeed for talking to us, Nigel. Good luck for your speech later on. I'm sure it'll be barnstorming as always. Good to speak to you. Nigel Farage there, always on form.